Welcome to the Office of Undergraduate Research Education Series. Today's session is on nationally competitive scholarships and research, and our speakers are Allison Shimko and Susan Anderson. And this is a virtual event and it's being recorded, so please mute yourself and turn off your camera to ensure the best experience. If you have questions, please use the chat feature or unmute yourself when you're invited by the speaker. And this is the event evaluation. We would love everybody to complete that at the end of the presentation, but we want to remind the Europe and the Wilkes scholars, you must complete this to receive credit for attending today. And the mission of the Office of Undergraduate Research is to facilitate and promote undergraduate, student, faculty, collaborative research and creative works in all disciplines throughout the U campus. And we would like to acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The U recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We have Allison Shimko. She's the Associate Director of the Office of Nationally Competitive Scholarships, and Susan Anderson, who's a Program Manager in the same office.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited to speak with you today about our office, the Office of Nationally Competitive Scholarships. And it's a mouthful, so we often just abbreviate as ONCS. So you'll be hearing me use that phrase throughout this presentation. So first and foremost, I just wanted to introduce you to our team. Ginger Smoke is our director, and she is a professor in the Honors College and also a medieval historian. If you haven't taken a class with her yet, she's amazing. Allison Shimko is our associate director. She's a former Fulbright recipient and a student from the Honors College as well. And I'm the program manager. My background's in English, and I previously worked at the Tanner Humanities Center, and I love to talk about writing. So if you come to us with your materials, I will review them in detail. So what is ONCS? ONCS helps undergraduate and graduate students and recent alumni from all campus areas apply for nationally competitive scholarships. We help candidates navigate complex application processes to submit competitive applications for these awards. Your first question might be, what is a nationally competitive scholarship? And these are different from scholarships that are internal to the University of Utah or even to the state of Utah. They're highly prestigious scholarships funded and managed by external organizations other than the University of Utah. So things like the things like the U.S. Department of State, the Rhodes Trust, the Goldwater Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These are things external to the university. And because of that, applicants will compete with people from across the U.S. and often from across the world for these prestigious opportunities. These types of nationally competitive awards enable students to complete postgraduate study, conduct research, gain foreign language training, develop career skills through work training, and teach English abroad. And for you, we think you'll probably want to focus mostly on the postgraduate study and research, but there's lots of other opportunities available as well. So what does a nationally competitive scholarship cover? This is very much dependent upon the scholarship, but funds may support tuition, or you'll get a research stipend, intensive language or leadership training, books or course materials or lab materials, passport and visa fees, international and domestic travel, health insurance in some cases, and also living expenses. Who can apply for a nationally competitive scholarship? And you will hear us say this over and over. It really will depend on the scholarship. It'll depend on your background, your experiences, all of those things. Some will focus on a specific year in your undergraduate training or your graduate training. You can only apply as a second or third year student. You apply the final year of your undergrad or after earning a bachelor's degree. You can apply until you earn a PhD. That the Fulbright program is one that does that in particular. And there are some opportunities that are available for University of Utah alumni as well. Some of these opportunities are open to all majors and all disciplines, and some have specific areas of interest, like a STEM focus or a research focus. Some are service oriented or focus on foreign language training, and then some really want to hone your leadership skills and require a lot of leadership experience for the opportunity. So, what does our office offer you if you want to apply for one of these nationally competitive opportunities? The first thing we do is we meet with students and we try to talk about the different opportunities that might align with your academic and professional goals. We like to meet with students early and often. Come to us when you're a first year student and tell us what your hopes and dreams are and your plans for your academic life. And then we can talk about some opportunities that might align during your undergraduate years. Or maybe you want to think, maybe you've decided even as a sophomore that you want to pursue a PhD in a STEM field. Well, we can talk about what opportunities might be available for you when you're a senior and how you might position yourself effectively to apply for those. What are the experiences that you need to pursue as a student to make yourself competitive? We determine your eligibility. Do you have the appropriate background? Do you have the required GPA that some of them require that some of them want? Do you have publications if that's appropriate? So we'll help you figure those things out. We will help you understand the application processes, the endorsement process, if that's applicable to your particular scholarship you're applying for. We will remind you of timelines and we will discuss deadlines. We will help you, we sort of help you navigate this process so that you don't miss a deadline, so that you have all the materials you need and that they're competitive. We will talk about the various requirements, and I'll get to that in a minute. What do you have to have for this particular scholarship opportunity? We will provide guidance and feedback on your written materials. In many cases, these materials will require 5 to 10 revisions. These are nationally competitive. You need your materials to be excellent. We will organize endorsement interviews and committees and arrange any practice interviews if applicable. Some of these nationally competitive scholarships, when you get to a finalist stage, they'll require an interview, and we will put together a committee to help you prepare for those as well. And I'm going to turn things over to Allison now, who will go through the different types of scholarships that might be of interest to you. This is just like the cusp of what we offer, but these probably will align most with your interests as they align with OUR.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Susan. So, yeah, that's great. What our office does, all that sort of stuff. But what are our actual scholarships? What do we want you guys to think about applying for? What opportunities might be really interesting and stuff. So I'll talk about undergrad experiences. There's not as many opportunities for scholarships. A lot of them are geared towards postgraduate, things like that. But there are some really great ones for people interested in research and research in general. So that's a really great one. And then graduate, when you think about, after University of Utah, what is your next step? There are a lot of different opportunities and things like that we'll get into. Again, we kind of talked a little bit about, what types of nationally competitive scholarships we have. We're mostly going to focus on the academic study programs and the research opportunities, although there are experiential learning. So I just want to kind of say before we jump into all of the types of ones is that this is not a definitive list. This is not all of the ones that exist. There are plenty of people that come to us and say, hey, is this a nationally competitive scholarship? Could you help me on this? And a lot of times it does fall under, those sorts of criteria that we determine as a nationally competitive scholarship. But we're mostly going to focus on the academic study programs and the research opportunities. So first, we're going to talk about the undergraduate ones. So the Goldwater Scholarship and the DAD-RISE. So the Goldwater Scholarship is funding specifically for sophomores or juniors who intend to pursue a research PhD in STEM. This is the sophomore and junior is when you would apply for it. So again, as Susan talked in the beginning, who is eligible to apply for these things? It depends on the scholarship, right? This one is only open for during your sophomore and junior year. And again, if you're confused on your eligibility, if you're taking 5 years, things like that, just come talk to us and we can definitely help you figure out and navigate that space, right? The big thing is the research PhD in STEM, right? They're really geared towards research and the future researchers of tomorrow, per se. So really thinking about, what your future goals are. If you're in the Office of Undergraduate Research, if you're doing a UROP, if you're doing all these things that align with research, align with STEM specifically, and you want to go on and do a PhD, really change the world in your own way in STEM, this is a great scholarship for that. It's $7,500 for 1 or 2 years. So again, it depends on when you apply. So if you apply as a sophomore, the process takes a while to determine exactly when you would get it. So you'd find out at the end of your sophomore year if you get it. And then if you do, then it would be for your junior and senior years. If you get it as a junior, then it would apply for that $7,500 for tuition, books, and room and board for your last year. So again, if you're confused on when to apply and when it actually takes effect, just come talk to us about this. This is the oldest and most prestigious national scholarship in STEM. You're competing with people in the US. This, again, for sophomores and juniors, but this is something that grad schools, PhD programs specifically will be like, wow, a Goldwater. Everyone knows what a Goldwater is. It really touts your ability to do STEM research, be able to do it in that effectively in a PhD program in the future, things like that. So it's a really great scholarship, not just for the money, obviously, but for the experience of having that network of people that also are doing the same sort of thing and really focused in on that, and allows you to continue your education and research. Yeah, so that is Goldwater. This one also requires what Susan was kind of talking about is an endorsement. So I'm just going to kind of quickly talk about that. So some scholarships require an endorsement from the University of Utah to kind of sign off and say you can apply for that. And so sometimes, it might be competing with people at the University of Utah first. It might be something that you have. You go through the process and then you're allowed to apply and see if the committee will allow you to apply to that scholarship. So again, that's really confusing and nuts and bolts and things like that. We help on that. We help tell you about that. But Goldwater is one that we does have an endorsement process that goes through, and so we help navigate that as well. The Dad Rise, this is a really great scholarship. This, unlike Goldwater, doesn't have an endorsement process, so you guys can just straight up apply. This is one that I suggest to everyone. If you're involved in research, if you guys have heard of the research experiences for undergraduates, REUs, this is essentially a similar program that runs in Germany. It's a STEM research internship at a university in Germany. You don't have to speak German, so don't worry if you don't have that language skill that you're thinking of. They're really wanting you to get involved in research and continue your research experiences. This again is for sophomores and juniors. I'll talk about if you're in, your final years, there's also a program for, there's a Dad Rise Professional, which is essentially the same thing, but if you're graduating or in a master's or a PhD program, you can do a similar program like this, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this one specifically is for sophomores and juniors, and you essentially apply to 3 projects that you might want to work on. So when it releases, the application will come out and say, okay, all of these people need help on these projects. You can pick up to 3 of them and you write a cover letter based on, the criteria of what the lab would look for, what they're looking for. They're looking for the fit of that lab, what your research has done. If you haven't done research, it's a great way to say, maybe I haven't quite done it, but this would be a great experience. I'm getting involved. And again, if you're confused or you need help with that, that's where ONCS comes in. But it's a really great one. Everyone can apply to these opportunities. You don't need something from the University of Utah to sign off on those. And again, we can tell you about those. All right, I'm going to switch focus to the graduate scholarship. So this is thinking about maybe a gap year, maybe actually a long-term opportunity for you. So it can be lots of different things. So we'll talk about those too. So first, we're going to talk about the U.S. scholarship, so what's based here. And I'll just say, a lot of these scholarships, just to, in general, I know somebody might have submitted something, or there are usually some questions about international students and what they can apply for. A lot of these scholarships, unfortunately, don't allow students from different countries to apply to them, international students per se. There are other resources at the University of Utah in which to get some sort of funding. I know we can kind of talk a little bit about international Fulbright when we get there, but unfortunately, a lot of the nationally competitive scholarships, because sometimes they're national, are competing with US citizens. And so I just want to kind of make that unfortunately we don't know a ton of ones that work for international, but if you reach out to us, we can kind of help try to guide you as well. All right, I'm going to let Susan talk about Beinecke, which is the first scholarship.
This is a relatively new scholarship that our office is managing, and it's a wonderful opportunity for students in the arts, humanities, and social sciences. This particular scholarship will fund graduate study in the arts, humanities, and social sciences. This can be research-based or creative work, so you could do an MFA if you wanted. You could also do a more traditional research study. Just so the foundation does not want to fund students who are in neuroscience or clinical psychology programs. So if that's you, you would just not apply to this one. There's other opportunities available, but not this one. One great aspect of this particular opportunity is that it's a supplemental award of $3,500. So it's in addition to any other funding you may get from a graduate program or another scholarship opportunity. You would then get this money to distribute over the 5 years of a graduate program. And so it's a really wonderful way to kind of add a little funds to your graduate work throughout your career. You must be a junior, and they're very specific about this, a third-year student to apply and have a documented history of being eligible to receive need-based financial aid during your undergraduate study. The sort of overall plan of this foundation is that students who may not want to pursue graduate work in arts and humanities and social sciences with financial need are given this additional funding so that they can pursue their passions and these degrees as well. The criteria for this particular opportunity is a strong academic record and recommendations, a clarity of your research or your creative focus, and then a knowledge and fit of proposed graduate programs. And so you will, when you submit this application, you give a list of 5 graduate programs. I think it's 3 to 5. I have to look at that again, but that would align with your project. Why do you want to go to the University of Iowa? Why do you want to go to Berkeley to do this particular program? So you need to be really informed about what these programs offer and how your work would align with that. Allison.
Great. And I would say, this is that's a really good point in general about the criteria for a lot of these scholarships is that they're going to really want, like, why is this the next part of your journey? Whether it's doing research or a graduate study program or whatever it might be, why does this have to be the next logical step in your journey? Why this fit or this program? What will propel you in your career? And a lot of times, right, these scholarships, you want to try to persuade them, make an argument as to why you need this to do. Like, this is something you would do anyway, and this is the means to do it. But I'm really going to, quote unquote, change the world or something like that through STEM, or through, arts, humanities, social sciences, whatever it might be. That's kind of what they're looking for, is how is this opportunity to fund this going to help you and propel you in a situation to launch your career in a way that will help towards the goals of these programs, right? And so another thing that I recommend is also looking at these websites and doing your own research about, what are the mission statements of these? Sometimes I put, where they say, I'll get into in a second, but I can put some of the mission statements, but it's really important to see what they're looking for and how you align with those goals, right? Not every opportunity is going to fit. And that's kind of the point of this presentation, is like, this is the reason we're doing so many different scholarships, is to kind of show you that there's lots of different opportunities out there. Not everyone's going to fit, and that's okay. It's about figuring out what makes the sense, like what makes the most sense for your trajectory, for your career path, for your professional development, personal growth, whatever it might be. And so that's kind of just a good point in general, is just kind of thinking about how is this going to fit into your general life plans, right? And it's okay if things change, but those are kinds of the ideas that they're looking for in this. They want to see that you have a plan. It's okay if the plan changes.
Just
Um,
add a bit to Allison's point. If you're going to apply to the Goldwater Foundation, you need to know who Barry Goldwater is and what he did. If you're going to apply to the Beinecke Foundation, you definitely need to go on the website and learn about the Beinecke family and what they have done to impact arts, humanities, and social science education. I'm thinking of the Gates Cambridge Foundation as well. That's something you just need to know about Bill and Melinda Gates and what their priorities are as you're developing your material so that you can, again, make the best argument about your candidacy.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a good point too about just general. I mean, if you're applying to a UROP or you're applying to Spur or something, what are the goals of that program? What is that scholarship looking for? University of Utah scholarships, read the description. What is, maybe the people who are sponsoring the money and sponsoring that, what are their overall goals? Why are they giving this scholarship and stuff? So those are just kind of good points to think about in this general presentation, but in anything you apply for is how does this align and what are they really looking for? And does it align, right? If it doesn't, there are other opportunities out there too. All right. So just kind of again, we're going to go through a lot of these scholarships. Just keep in mind there's lots of different opportunities. So the Hertz Fellowship, this is 5 years of funding for a STEM PhD. This is really where they're trying to look for innovators in STEM. How is your project going to be really different? The idea behind this was kind of cutting the ties of maybe an institution and their funding, and allowing you to really take control of your project the way that you would want to, without needing necessarily the funds per se, from the institution themselves. And so it gives you the freedom to explore this STEM research, innovation, idea that you might have, that you're kind of saying, okay, like I would love to do this, but maybe there's some red tape or something like that. This kind of allows you to have that freedom. And again, like they're looking for, they say awarded to the nation's most promising STEM graduate students to identify innovators with the greatest potential to create transformative solutions to the world's most urgent problems, right? But there's lots of different ways. And right, you can go on the website, look at who has been awarded this and what they're doing, and kind of say, okay, well, how would I want to kind of change the world in these urgent problems and things like that through my STEM PhD. So that's a really great fellowship. It's really innovative, really different, and allows you to have a lot of freedom in tackling a big research project that you might want to do, as you kind of think about a research PhD. The Junior Fellows program is a little different. So this one is more geared towards people who are interested in foreign affairs, international peace. It's essentially 1 year of funding, working with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. Really fantastic. You're working with senior associates essentially. You get to, I forget all of the things that they do, but you can edit papers, you sit in on meetings with high level executives and things like that, or high level associates. It also helps you train their idea, right? Their mission statement helps them train the next generation of international scholar practitioners to help take on the most difficult global problems and safeguard peace. And so it's a different research experience looking at policies, perhaps. They have lots of different areas in terms of what sorts of things they look at. It's more of a work experience where you're doing research and getting paid for that. You're not necessarily getting a degree afterwards. It might be a good gap year before you go and do master's, PhD, something like that. It might, propel you in a different direction and you might get really involved in Washington, D.C. Who knows? But it's really supposed to help people who are interested in international affairs and kind of getting off the ground in this research area. It's a really cool scholarship. It's really fantastic. All right, back to STEM things. The NSF GRFP, really great. So the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, which is why we say NSF GRFP. That's long enough. Um, 3 years of funding for a research STEM PhD or master's. Really great because they give you an annual living stipend. They also give you some tuition and fees. Money for those tuition fees. And again, it's supposed to help this vitality and diversity of scientific and engineering workforce in the US. Future leaders in STEM, contributors to the scientific community is really what they're looking for. If you're interested in going to do a master's or PhD that's research oriented, this is a fantastic scholarship. So highly recommend. The Knight Hennessy Scholarship, this one allows any sort of graduate degree program. So again, this can include, a research aspect of it, but it also covers, things like professional degree, so like law, medicine, things like that. So this is where these scholarships are a little bit different depending on what they are and what they're looking for, right? But it would cover a master's, PhD, any sort of professional degree that you would want in Stanford for 3 years of funding. And again, what that kind of entails would be, you would get, living stipend, tuition and fees, other things that are kind of included in that. And again, you can kind of look on the websites specifically if you're like, what does everything include? But a lot of these are like pretty well funded or fully funded to where you're paying little to nothing for most of these opportunities, depending on what they are. And again, if you're confused, just reach out to us. The big thing with Knight Hennessy is it's very leadership oriented. They are trying to bring together people from different disciplines to solve real world issues. So scholars join the interdisciplinary King Global Leadership Program to tackle complex challenges and discover new solutions to advance humanity. That's why they're bringing together lots of different people from different areas, right? Professional degrees, master's, PhDs, all different disciplines and things like that, to really tackle these real world issues. And so that's why leadership is highly important. And this is that you're a cohort and you're working together to try to solve something. And I think they depend on the cohort and what they choose. But again, it's a really fantastic opportunity. It's not just, okay, I get money for this, but it's about this enrichment of what does this other opportunity give me? What other networks and what other things could I gain from this that would allow me maybe to, build the research lab I eventually want or something, right? It kind of helps you gain a footing in the door about those sorts of things. And so this cohort bringing together these people, these communities and things like that is a big aspect of these scholarships usually. But again, depends on the scholarship, but Knight Hennessy is highly important in their leadership experiences and also just kind of complex challenges and tackling those. We're going to switch to the UK. So Rhodes is probably the most well-known scholarship. This is considered the oldest and most prestigious international scholarships, fully funded 2-year master's degree program in any discipline at the University of Oxford. So doesn't really matter what discipline you're in. So you could do STEM, you could do something not in STEM, anything. Obviously, Oxford, that is highly prestigious and stuff. Research will be an aspect depending on what you do, but I think that's a really important thing to think about is, what you would want to do in the next stages. The nice thing about this is that you can do a 2-year master's program, but you could also do 2 1-year master's programs at Oxford. So if you have two different interests that kind of would be nice to combine into 2 different master's programs at the end, it's really a great opportunity to do that. Because it's highly selective, they're looking for academic excellence, character, commitment to others and common good, and potential leadership and future career. Again, how do you show those? We will kind of help guide you towards that. This is kind of an overview of these, but if you're kind of really interested in something like this and want to get to know more information about that, look at the website first, kind of reach out to us, and then we can help kind of tackle those issues if you're looking for, a particular, question on there and you can't find it or something like that. So, It's a really great scholarship. Saba was the last one who had won it. That is who is here. She won it in 2022, 2023, and just I think finished up recently or so. So yeah, great scholarship, but also very competitive. And we help craft if you're really interested in something like this. We would talk very seriously with you about what sorts of things you would want to do, and we can help you prepare for that if you're in your career that you just started schooling for college and stuff like that. We can help you guide like what would make some opportunities more competitive for this. Marshall is kind of similar to Rhodes, but it has a little bit more flexibility. So it's a fully funded, again, 1 to 2 year masters. So you can do that 2 year masters where you combine 1 year programs. You can do a 2 year program. You could also stay for 1 year. It's just not as, you have to have a pretty good reason for that because they want you to build ties in these places. They don't want you to just go to the UK and be like, that was great. And I'm never going to talk to those people again. They want you to have lifelong connections to those things and really continue to build out your network of people and have almost be an ambassador to that place. So it's a really great program. They also allow you to do it in any discipline and any university in the UK. So again, Susan talked about fit of program. We're looking for fit of program here too, right? Why would you want to go to university like Bristol or so? Why would you want to do this engineering program? So, really thinking about that, the fit of program is really important. Gain an understanding and appreciation of British values and ways of life, I think is what I'm supposed to say there, while establishing long-lasting ties between the UK and the US. Criteria, academic merit, leadership potential, and ambassadorial potential. Again, we can help kind of craft those sorts of things and kind of think about what that experience looks like. Churchill, a lot of people who apply to Goldwater that I talked about earlier, very research oriented for undergrads, tend to apply to the Churchill Scholarship, which is a fully funded 1 year master's program at Cambridge in the STEM fields. Chosen for academic excellence, proven talent in research. They are very, very, very research heavy. So, where Goldwater is also very research heavy, they're looking for those future researchers kind of changing the world in your own way through STEM and stuff. Uh, Especially originality and creativity. Are you able to excel in a program that's going to be rigorous at Cambridge? And extending personal qualities, right? They are looking for people who have that commitment to helping others, things like that. And so that tends to be, a common thread across this is commitment to helping others in general. And we can help you kind of think about how that might be in your own life and how, you might want to continue doing that too. Gates Cambridge is a fully funded master's or PhD at Cambridge. So in any discipline, this is not STEM specific. So master's or PhD. PhDs in the UK are only 3 years. They are rigorous, but they are shorter. And so if you're more prepared for a rigorous kind of thing, it's really great. But they also offer masters. There is a little bit of an advantage, I guess, for the PhD candidates for 2/3 of the awards for Gates Cambridge, whereas 1/3 are given to master's students. Again, commitment to changing the world for the better. And again, this is like, right, very lofty, like changing the world, right? But they're really just kind of thinking about like in your own way, how do you want to benefit the community, benefit humanity and stuff. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be these lofty, lofty goals right now, but kind of thinking about how like this would solve maybe a gap in what we see in humanity or what we're seeing in society and things like that. So again, we can help you talk about this. A lot of this might be intimidating or things like that. Don't necessarily think about it like that. Come talk to us about that, and then we can kind of talk about what sorts of options might be good and what you might do. But a lot of people feel like they aren't competitive for these things. They are. We've seen a lot of success and more success with our students from the University of Utah. So just know that you could get one of these and it's completely plausible. So don't count yourself out. You won't get it if you don't apply or if you don't talk to us or anything like that. So All right, Germany. I'm just going to quickly talk about these because we kind of talked about these before, but the Dad Rise Professional was a different program. It's essentially like the Dad Rise that I've already talked about, research internship. It's a little bit different. They're at companies and non-university research institutions, but it is for recent graduates, master's students, and PhD students. So if you're thinking about you're going to graduate, this is still a great program. Can be up to 6 months, can be shorter as well. And again, same thing, you would apply to the specific projects that you might want to take on. And again, you can always apply, but keep it in the back of your mind as something that you might do at any point in your career. Dad, I just like to mention this too, but this is just a really big database. It's a little bit hard to navigate, but I have been able to navigate it and we've had people apply through it. But there are a lot of different things in this database. So it's all about Germany. Some have different requirements for languages, just depends. But you can do master's degree, there are research grants, doctoral programs, many more, and it just depends on the criteria for like the different scholarships and stuff. I think the last one we have, you guys are holding in, but the last one we have for scholarships, then we'll talk about a little bit more about how to prepare yourself for these and that sort of stuff. But the last one we have is the Fulbright program. This is one that has lots of different branches. So if you are an international student, there is an international one to come to the US and study. It doesn't allow you to go necessarily to a different country, but it would allow you to come to the US and study or do some language training and things like that. So there is a branch for international students for Fulbright specifically. I'm going to talk about the US student side of it. So it's called the Fulbright US Student Program. This is the one that is for US citizens. I can't remember what the other eligibility there is, but you can look on there. I can't remember if permanent residents are okay or not. So check the website if you have any questions or just reach out to us as well. But in terms of Fulbright, it's a really great program. It's available in more than 140 different countries. You have to unfortunately pick one only and apply to that one. And then you also have to pick one program. And so it's also for funding for postgraduates and graduate students. So anyone who is like thinking about graduating and going to get a bachelor's degree or already has a bachelor's degree are eligible to apply for that. And if you're still, younger in your college career, still reach out to us about this and we can help prep you because you technically apply for this during your junior, like spring of your, like around this time, if you're a junior right now, and then work on it in the summer and then apply for it very early in the fall semester of your senior year. And so we like to prep students well in advance to make a competitive application for things like this. So funding for postgraduates and graduate students that support study, research. So if you just want to go and do a research project in a different country, that's totally okay. If you want to do doctoral research, that's great too. Anything in between, you can finish your master's degree and then go do research. There's lots of different, as long as you don't have your PhD when the application is, when you apply for it, you can pretty much apply it most times as they kind of target young professionals because, you're not being paid a ton, but I think there's not a ton of age limitations like some other scholarships might be. And then there's also the English teaching assistantship program as well. So that's a really great program if you're like, yeah, like I want to just go do a different experiential learning opportunity. But again, that study and research is there. And specifically that research to go do another country is really great.
I'm giving Allison a break from all of her talking and want to discuss the application components. And one thing you need to know about these nationally competitive scholarships is the process involved in applying. These are highly prestigious and competitive. Some of them have a return rate of 1%, like Rhodes, or 25%, like Fulbright. But as Allison said earlier, if you don't apply, you won't get them. But we are here in the office to help you prepare competitive materials. And so many of these applications have multiple components, and some of them require 6 to 12 months to prepare, to draft your materials, to revise them, and to finalize and submit. And so this is just kind of a general overview of the types of things that might be included in an application. Again, it's really dependent upon the scholarship opportunity, but frequently there's some short answer questions. They may ask about your professional goals or your leadership philosophy or how you want to engage with the community. A Fulbright, for example, there's a question on how you want to develop mutual understanding. How will you build connections in the country that you're planning to do your Fulbright in? A personal statement. These are, I think a personal statement is pretty standard in most scholarship applications. This is the why. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this now? What is it about neurobiology that fuels you? Why have you always been interested in fossils and want to do research in South Africa on, fossil new fossils that are going to change the way we think about evolution? What is it about contemporary American poetry that keeps you up at night? What is the reason you want to pursue this? Sometimes this is a great place to talk about your background. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, and that informed how I thought about higher education, and I read a lot of books, and therefore I wanted to get a degree in English. And so, what is your journey? What is the story you want to tell? Along with these personal statements, you frequently have to write a more complicated essay. Not that the personal statement isn't complicated in its own way, but for opportunities like Rhodes, for example, and Knight Hennessy as well, you'll have to write a leadership essay. What is your leadership philosophy? How have you demonstrated leadership in your career so far? That could be on-campus leadership. That could be leadership in a religious organization or other community organization. Maybe you've worked for the Utah Food Bank in some way. And this is one of the reasons it's helpful for you to meet with us and talk about your background and your experience, because sometimes students don't understand what types of experiences can be leadership. How have you led a group doing something? Or maybe you were an RA, or maybe you were a peer ambassador. How do these all fit together to make a good argument about yourself? The ambassadorial potential essay, this is Marshall. They want to think about how you will build connections between the UK and the US. And this is an essay that sometimes trips students up. And again, we'd happily advise on this and look at your background and think about how you've done this in the past and how you might do this again in the future. A research essay or a statement of grant purpose. So this is something like Goldwater or Churchill is very interested in what kind of research project you plan to undertake based on the research you've already done, or if you don't have any research experience, how you'll expand that research experience. Fulbright calls it a statement of grant purpose. So if you're applying for a research project with Fulbright, you'll have to outline, where you want to work, who you're going to work with, what methodologies you're planning to use, what are the objectives of the research you plan to do. And again, we can help you tailor this, but that's a somewhat involved research essay as well. And then there's sometimes other essays that align with a particular foundation. So Allison hasn't mentioned it here, but there's a scholarship called the Udall Scholarship, and it wants you to talk about the Udall family and their priorities and how you embody those priorities in your work. So sometimes there are very targeted essays or questions based on what the foundation, their mission, or what they want to think about moving forward and how you align with that. In some cases, there's a language evaluation. This is for Fulbright in particular. I don't think there are other ones right now, but Allison may know more. Sometimes Fulbright will have, you need to have a novice level of Arabic to work in this particular lab or something like that. Or sometimes there's no language requirement. But if there is, we can talk to you about how to get that language evaluations at the University of Utah. Transcripts, of course, and sometimes they're official, sometimes they're unofficial, and so you need to know that in advance. And then finally, and this is sort of a more complex part of the application process, it's letters of recommendation. And some scholarship opportunities don't require any. Some require, like Rhodes, 5 to 8, and we recommend 6 to 8, so You want to think about who can speak to your work in a careful and complex way, who can make the best argument about you as a candidate. So often when we meet with you in a preliminary way, we'll ask you, who are your mentors at the University of Utah or in the community who could speak to you as a potential candidate? What could they say? Maybe an application requires 3 letters of recommendation. Churchill, for example, is very research focused. So all of those recommenders need to be either academics or they work in the lab or something very high level. For another scholarship, you may have someone who needs to write a character reference, and that could be someone outside of the university. So we can really strategize about who are your potential recommenders and who would make the best argument about you as a candidate. How can I be a competitive applicant? And this is an excellent question. And the first and foremost thing you should do is get involved on campus, and in your community. Engage with the world, engage with your university, engage with each other, pursue your passions, things like that. Secondarily, build connections with faculty, staff, community partners, and other students. If you do need 5 to 8 recommendations for some kind of opportunity, build those relationships now. Someone who can speak to your growth as a student. You've taken 3 courses with this faculty member in your University of Utah career, and they can talk about how you came from point A to point B, and now these are the things they want to think about for you moving forward. Do you have the capacity to be an excellent graduate student in a competitive program? I'm a big tracker of things, and I like journals, I like lists, I like working documents. Track and reflect upon informative or meaningful experiences that you've had throughout your life, not just at the University of Utah, but what were the times we worked with a student I mentioned her earlier who was interested in fossils, working in South Africa on a research project on fossils, and she could track that back to like digging in her backyard as a small child and looking at rocks and thinking about that. And so she could tell this really wonderful story about now she's wants to move to South Africa and do this work there. What are there meaningful courses you've taken? Have you built meaningful relationships in the community? Have you volunteered at the Bennion Center or done a study abroad experience? Have you had a summer research opportunity in a lab that really changed your thinking about your future? You realized, I love research, or maybe you realized I hate research. It really depends. Whatever story you have to tell, this is a good way to kind of keep track of it. Next, you want to clarify, I would say repeatedly and often, your academic, your research, and your professional goals. These may shift from your first year to your senior year, but how do you think about the work you want to do moving forward? Is there a particular job you're interested in, or a particular university you want to work at, or there's a national lab, that's where you want to end up? What do you need to do to get there? What kind of experiences do you need to pursue through the Office of Undergraduate Research, or maybe there's leadership experiences, etc. Solicit feedback on your application. It's really helpful to start early because then you can get feedback from faculty, staff, our office. Sometimes it's good to have family members look stuff over just because they can keep you honest about your experiences and what you gain from them. Just getting a lot of people to look at it at all stages, and brainstorm along the way too. And then our advice to students always: take some risks, fail, succeed, figure out what fuels you personally and professionally. Often when we meet with students, we want to know, what do you do outside your schoolwork? We met with a student yesterday, for example, who is a fencer. And there's a way that when we eventually work with the student on doing application materials, does fencing inform that work, or does the dedication and the determination related to that apply to the research the student wants to do? So we just like to know who you are as a full person. And then finally, meet with us early and often. We enjoy meeting with students early in their career just to see who they are and what they want to be, and to advise on the opportunities they might want to explore in their University of Utah career. We are happy to look over drafts of any materials over and over to really refine them. And so we're here to help and to give you support along the way. And then finally, this is our very long titled website and our email address. If you want to contact us, you can set up a meeting. We can chat via email and figure out when you might want to meet with us, what types of opportunities align. I think it's really useful before you meet with us to kind of think about what your goals are professionally and academically and personally, so that we can kind of dig deep and figure out what might align effectively at whatever stage of your career you're in right now. Anything else, Allison? I think that's everything.
I mean, just as a reminder, this is not an exhaustive list on our website, right? And obviously we didn't go through an exhaustive list either on this PowerPoint presentation. So there are plenty of opportunities out there that you might know about and, or is on our website and you're like, this is great. Just come meet with us. Also, this is a lot of information. So I tend to suggest to students to digest it. Give it some thought. I know that this is being recorded, so if you're, watching it live, you can always watch it back and be like, okay, what were they saying, or things like that, or even if it's being recorded. So just take the opportunity to digest the information and don't feel too overwhelmed at the place that you're at and you're like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing or whatever, right? That is okay too, right? But sometimes it's just helpful to meet with us and be like, oh yeah, like I really like these things. I don't know if I want to do this or this. Sometimes, like I know I don't want to do that. So, it really does help if you're interested in these opportunities or anything sparked your interest, or if you go on our website and see anything, definitely come reach out to us, send us an email, and we can kind of talk a little bit more specifically about, your specific goals and what you want to do and how you might get there too, and if it aligns with any of these too. So.
One other thing, Allison and I will be in the Carolyn Tanner Irish Humanities Building on April 1st, 2025 from 12 to 2, talking about opportunities. And I know that's right next to the Office of Undergraduate Research. So pop on over if you have any questions and we can set up appointments, things like that too.
All right, we'll open it up. I know that we have a little bit of time left for any questions. And also, if this was so much information and so overwhelming that you can't think of questions right now, that's okay too. You can always just send us an email if you have questions later on. This is not the only opportunity to connect with our office and ask questions about what we've presented today. Feel free to send us an email if questions do crop up that you're not necessarily thinking about today.
One of the registrants asked where they could get help on campus writing their personal statement and essays and everything. I know you guys said that people could come to you, but are there any other places?
There is a writing center on campus, and I think that's housed in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric Studies, and it might be at the library, and they can help you with your materials. But if you are applying for a nationally competitive scholarship, it's a really good idea to consult with our office, because we have worked with, last year alone, we had 26 students apply for Fulbright, and we went through everyone's personal statements, and we have expertise in this area for that particular opportunity. And so we can really guide students effectively. But it's always good to get, like the Writing Center is a great resource if you're trying to brainstorm and figure out what you want to write about. We're also happy to help with that too. Depending on the time of the year, sometimes we're really flooded with a lot of materials, but we're very happy to help with that.
Yeah, I should mention, I mean, we just for our office, for the personal statements and things like that, we are working with students who are actively applying for these scholarships and things like that. And so we unfortunately don't have the bandwidth to work with every student on just a personal statement for necessarily like a grad school or things like that. And so that's where I would utilize other campus resources that you would have, like the Writing Center and stuff. But, you also have at your disposal other people. Peers are really fantastic. They will, especially if you trust them and things like that, family members, faculty faculty members, professors that you trust. You have other support systems as well, besides the Writing Center, besides our office. If you're applying for one of these scholarships, there are different support systems that you might just have to seek out and stuff. And, don't be afraid to just ask somebody. And, more times than not, they're more than willing to help out. So that's a good way of thinking about things too, is that there are more than just campus resources. There are also your own support systems to help edit and things like that. But of course, you as our office, if you're applying for one of these scholarships, and we definitely will help you craft an application personal statement for these.
And one sort of complicated thing about a personal statement is that some scholarship opportunities will have very specific prompts or questions they're asking you. They may have a word count. Writing a 500-word personal statement is very different than writing a 1,500-word personal statement. And we can help you figure out how to maximize your story for that particular opportunity. And it's also really useful when you're asking for a recommendation to attach those documents for a faculty member to see what your vision is so that they can reference it in their own recommendations. And so they frequently will also provide feedback on that as well.
Okay, well, thank you again. I just wanted to remind everybody about the event evaluation. I'll put the link in the chat again, but please remember the Europe and Wilk Scholars must complete this in order to get credit for attending today. And the Office of Undergraduate Research, we're located in the Sill Center, which is just east of the Union parking lot. We're here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Our website is our.utah.edu, or you can email us at our@utah.edu. And thank you again, Allison and Susan. This was very informative. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Shelley. We appreciated being able to attend.
Yes, and thank you everyone for coming.
Mm-hmm.